Yeah, well, I'll tell you. So yes, I was. We were not helping my father. I was with my father, my parents that day, and I was with my father in the garden, and I got the text from you, and then I looked in somewhere else, and I got it, and then my mother calls me, and she's like, "There's a verdict." So my dad, and just my parents are 89 and 85 respectively. Dad 89, mom 85, and it was funny because I said, "Dad, let's go. There's a verdict," because we were in the garden and he's he's in his own space, and he looked at me and he kept doing what he was doing. Then he looked up a verdict, and he and then he went scampering in. And just so you know, Dad is 89 years old. He's got strength, but he walks like he's a toddler. He should be using a cane. If you could have seen him run into the house, it was one of the funniest things I witnessed in my life. So as we're sitting there, we're watching it. Um, I had the same anticipation, had the same anxiousness, the same anxiety, but there were some things that I was looking to based upon what we'd been being told, based upon what we've heard and known about trials, was um, I felt good it wasn't going to be a hung jury. And the reason why I felt good was it wasn't going to be a hung juries don't come back that quick. If a jury is hung, that's usually after. I won't prescribe the length of the deliberations, but it's usually a significantly longer deliberation where and I think that the jury was sat too soon, or I knew this jury was sat too soon for a hung jury to be the case. I thought that the questions, um, and you and I both knew there was never a question of, even the defense said there would never be an acquittal. They were looking at best for a hung jury, and understand that um, that meant that everyone felt that the majority of the people on the jury would find Trump guilty. So the only when you think about it, and it's hindsight now, retrospect and hindsight, but the only way something comes back that quick is guilty, and probably guilty on all counts, strictly because of the preponderance of evidence and everyone assuming that he was guilty, and that there'd only be a holdout juror, and there's no way holdout jurors would have been able to flip it. And then also when you look at the questions. So to your point, yeah, I think we were all a little anxious, and mainly because the man shouldn't have been president in the first place. And so um I think that there was always a uncomfort or discomfort that he may beat the charges. But and I think like I said earlier when we first started, we're going to be all over the place. But the other thing I've said, in addition to promising that Trump would be convicted by Memorial Day, I was 3 days over. But the other thing I've been always saying is that Trump's legal problems, Trump's um, potential conviction or acquittal, should never have been part of the Democratic strategy. I still maintain that, but it's some great auxiliary icing stuff. Um, and so no, and let's also push back here. Um, there is, and it was predicted. You and I could have predicted it. I think we did predict it. That there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, a conviction is only going to help Trump." And I know you've been looking at numbers. A convention doesn't help Trump. And what's funny, and I'd love your thoughts on this from a polling perspective. I think a poll came out on Saturday or Friday or Saturday that kind of reflected this. Is a conviction is not going to take somebody who was going to not vote for Trump, and make them vote for Trump. It might make his ride or dies ride harder, but I don't think it takes people who are undecided or who are not going to vote for him and flip their vote. And, when you look at, and this is where people have to be careful, when you look at the small percentage of people who are in fact impacted by the conviction, most of those people that are impacted are going to be more likely not to vote for him. And even though it's a small number, as close as this race is, it's all it needs to be to work to Biden's advantage. So you look at the polling. What are your thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, it's interesting. All the pollsters said it's just too early. Any poll that comes out within the next 2 weeks is too early to gauge this. And I my immediate reaction was this wasn't a normal Trump story that broke on MSNBC or Fox. From what I understand, ABC, CBS, NBC all broke into coverage to relay this story. And so a normal voter that can be swung, that isn't watching cable news, probably had some sort of interruption in their day, whether it was at work and somebody said it. I follow somebody who was on a plane, and little by little, pockets of people on the plane were figuring it out, and all of a sudden, the whole plane knew. So I don't think that if you have a smartphone or anything, your day wasn't interrupted by this news. So if you're an independent voter, you probably know about this immediately once it happened. So I think polls, um, I don't think we have to wait that long. There was another poll today, by the way. I know you mentioned the one on Friday, but there was another poll today that came out and basically said the same thing, was that he lost a good significant amount. And you said something. There's a lot here to say, but you said something interesting about it doesn't have to be a lot, right? If this election was close, remember in politics, John, 4 points, 5 points is a massive swing. So if Biden is up one or down one and it swings 2, 3, 4, or 5 points, that's a blowout in an election. I'm not saying that it will happen here. What I'm saying is in a close election, you losing 15,000 people in Michigan or 15,000 people in Wisconsin or 20,000 people in Arizona, that's a big swing. Hillary only lost Michigan by 11,000. And I could attribute to the Comey coming out a week before the election saying there's something going on here, could have flipped those 11,000 people. So there's not a theory in this world that tells me that this is good for Trump. And here's why I also know that. Before the verdict, before the trial or during the trial, all the talking heads on the right were saying, "Oh, Biden is doing this so he can win the election. Because if Trump is convicted, then it hurts him, and Biden wins the election." Even Trump said it. They're doing this because they want me to lose the election. And as soon as he's convicted and he's a felon, they flip the narrative into, "Oh, this is going to help him." How was the trial hurt, but the conviction help? It doesn't make any sense on any sort of level. As far as polling, I don't need polling here, John. And I read into that a lot, maybe even too much. I don't need polling to tell me that a convicted felon is probably going to lose a good amount of voters, and that could swing a state, especially a state like Wisconsin or Michigan that Biden really needs. Lastly, why are they trying to prosecute Biden? Why are they trying to impeach Biden? Why are they trying to prosecute Biden if they think it helps them? If prosecuting Biden helps him lose the election, then by default, um, the conviction hurts Trump. You sent me something on Twitter I completely agreed with, was the idea that does it help Trump if he was acquitted? And I thought that was a very poignant point, right? If Trump was acquitted, I thought it would have boosted him. He wasn't, so I have to believe that the opposite, which it hurt him. So fundamentally speaking, I think this was a pivot point in the election, because I think this is going to drown a lot of those independent voters.